The Astro A50 X is a wireless gaming headset that launched for $380 US. Can all of its features possibly make it worth this price? Well, let's break it down. So what does this headset do that's so special, and who is it even made for? In short, the A50X has excellent multi-platform connectivity with great headphone and mic audio quality. It's made for people who have multiple consoles in the same place and want to use the same headset with all their systems. The A50X headset comes with this base station, which is actually doing a lot of the work, so I'm going to explain what this does first. So this thing has many different functions. First of all, the base station charges the headset using these gold connectors. Just match them up with the ones on the bottom of the headset itself. Click this in, and then this will start charging. Now this headset supposedly gets 24 hours of battery life, but since I always connect it to the base station after I'm done using it, I haven't really been able to verify that yet. Secondly, the base station connects to PC, PS5, and Xbox Series S or X simultaneously. Now it does this in two ways. So all three systems connect with a USB-C to USB-A cable, though you can use your own USB-C to C for consoles if you want. In fact, the A50X only even comes with one USB cable in the box anyway. In addition to the USB connection, PS5 and Xbox also connect using HDMI. It's recommended to use 2.1 cables, so this thing can pass through the highest quality from your systems. Now there are full guides from Logitech on how to set up this headset for PC, Xbox, and PlayStation. If this all seems too complicated, because this definitely is the most complicated headset that I've ever used, but do keep in mind their PlayStation video is actually off. The game chat mixer will not work if you actually do it the way they say, so I'll show you the correct way to do it, and they'll probably make an updated video on that anyway because they've already acknowledged it in their subreddit. Now the HDMI connection serves three main purposes. One, it acts as an HDMI pass-through, so it sends up to 4K 120Hz footage through the base station to your monitor lag-free, just like a capture card. It will also send audio through, but only if the headset is not active. If it is active, like when you pick it up and this thing is powered on, then the base station instead extracts the HDMI audio and reroutes it to the headset itself so that you can hear it. Now, why would you want something this convoluted just to get audio? What's wrong with just using a USB dongle like the Logitech G Pro X2 or pretty much every other wireless gaming headset out right now? Well, it's because of the second thing the HDMI connection does, and that function is why I believe this headset even exists in the first place. It's the game to voice mixer. On Xbox, when connected only USB, you can just use the game and voice buttons to make either one louder so that you can prevent teammates or party chat from being drowned out by the game audio or vice versa. With HDMI and USB, the functionality still works, it just won't show up in the Xbox menu. But on PS5, and this is the big one, using both HDMI and USB into the base station will allow you to get the game audio from the HDMI and the chat audio through USB. And then the game voice mixer will make either the game or voice louder, finally allowing you to use this functionality without having a Sony branded headset since they removed this functionality from third-party headsets several years ago. It's a pretty extreme workaround, but Astro didn't really have much choice because the current consoles don't have optical ports. This is the Astro A50 Gen 4, and you see it has optical in. That was the workaround for the game to chat mixer. Now you do have to set this up a very specific way. If you follow Astro's original video, this will not work. So on the PS5, go to settings, audio, and then mic input should be the A50X. The audio output should be the A50X headset, not HDMI. Then scroll down to output audio to headset and make that voice chat only. That way your game audio is going to the HDMI, which is still going to the base station, and then the chat is going to USB, still technically to the base station, but since they're coming through separately, the headset is able to mix them to make one louder or one quieter. And you can tell that you set this up correctly by doing a mic volume test in the PS5 mic settings menu. Your voice playback should get louder when you increase the voice, and the menu music should get louder when you increase game. And I know this is a lot, but this headset is stuffed with features. And of course, use the timestamps if you need. But the third purpose of the HDMI inputs is that the base station actually works as an HDMI switcher. So with the PlaySync button, you can toggle between Xbox, PS5, and PC audio. And this also switches the HDMI output of the base station to either Xbox or PS5, since PC doesn't get HDMI in. So you'll just have to plug that into a second HDMI port or display port if that's what your monitor has. So this is a super cool feature for those that have multiple consoles and want to use the same headset with both and switch between the video of both without unplugging any wires and without any hassle at all. But I'm guessing this is also a pretty niche feature. How many of you actually have both the PS5 and Xbox Series S or X and both of them in the same location? I know I didn't. In fact, I actually went out and bought a PS5 specifically for the purpose of testing this functionality for this review so that I can make it as complete as possible. Now the base station does one more thing, which is Bluetooth, and the A50X does Bluetooth simultaneously with the Lightspeed connection. Lightspeed is just the name for the non-Bluetooth wireless connection from the base station to the headset. So the Bluetooth kind of sucks on this thing for a couple of reasons. Number one, the Bluetooth is not actually built into the headset itself, it's built into the base station. The base station is using the Bluetooth connection and then routing that audio to the headset, which is problematic for reason number two, which is the range from the headset to the base station is about 10 feet, 15 maximum before it starts cutting out. So forget walking over to the kitchen to grab a snack between matches. Forget taking this thing outside on the go or even just in the backyard. You can't really use this as a legitimate pair of Bluetooth headphones. Something you actually can do with Logitech G's own Pro X2. So that's the base station and all of its features. So let's finally talk about the headset itself. Now onto the controls. On the outside of the left ear cup is a flip up to mute microphone. Now, unlike the Astro A40, this microphone is not detachable. On the outside of the right ear cup are the game and voice buttons that will mix between the game and the voice. Of course, make one louder or one quieter. Now, on the back of the right ear cup is a power switch, down, power off, up, power on, and it'll glow orange when it's charging. The placing button, which will toggle the base station between the different input sources, and a Bluetooth button and volume wheel. The volume wheel is infinite scroll, but it doesn't actually control system volume, only the headset itself, and I like that a lot. Now, the Bluetooth button can be held for 3 seconds to pair the base station with a phone, for example. Once paired, 1 press answers calls or pauses and plays tracks, 2 presses goes forwards a track, and 3 goes back a track. Holding the button down rejects calls. Also on the bottom of the right ear cup is this USB-C charging port, just in case you need to be charging this and using it at the same time. And now for the actual performance headphone audio quality. So the Astro A50 X is using 40mm graphene drivers with a frequency range of 20 Hz to 20 kHz, the full range of human hearing. But there's clearly drop off on both ends, just like most headsets and headphones. Now this is different than the Astro A50 Gen 4, which uses 40mm dynamic drivers. And if you didn't know by now, Logitech actually owns Astro and they have for years. And before the A50 X came out, the Logitech G Pro X2 was released, uses graphene drivers, but they're 50mm. So just so you don't get confused, A50 X, A50 Gen 4, Logitech G Pro X2. So graphene is a type of material that is durable but also light. It hasn't been in use in a lot of headphones and headsets for very long, so I can't tell you too much about them from a technical perspective, but I'm sure that you're familiar with what a conventional dynamic driver is, which is what the A50 Gen 4 is using. I'll use this speaker as an example from Polk Audio. So if I take off the mesh grill here, then inside you'll see this cone. And this thing will move, it'll vibrate back and forth. And when it's really loud and it's pushing out a lot of bass, you can see it physically pushing out air and vibrating. A lot of car stereo speakers have this. When you go to a club, they generally have dynamic drivers and like really big giant speakers. And I'd say out of all the headsets that I've ever used, the A50 Gen 4 and the Dropos Epos PC38X are the only devices that can kind of get close to a kind of club sound if you wanted it, if you really boost up the bass, or if you just increase the volume, because they really do push out a lot of air. Now the Pro X2 with its graphene drivers has a very different sound signature in comparison to the A50 Gen 4. The highs and mids are opened up a lot and the bass is still there, but it's much more contained and doesn't physically push air and vibrate like the Astro A50 Gen 4. Now the A50 X sounds like a mix between the Pro X2 and the A50 Gen 4. The bass lost some of its power and vibration, especially the sub bass, but the highs and upper mids aren't quite as prominent as the Pro X2, which usually are pretty good, but depending on what you're listening to, it can get a little bit grating. Basically, if you use the bass boost preset in the Pro X2 that's in the Logitech G Hub software, it would be very similar to what you have by default in the A50 X. The highs don't hurt to listen to, dialogue doesn't sound overly sterile like the Maxwell, and the bass is satisfying for gaming without muffling any important sound cues. Now the soundstage is very closed in and narrow, a lot like the Astro A40 and the A50 Gen 4. But like I've said in previous videos, I actually like that type of sound. It really helps with the immersion for me, and I still won multiple games of Warzone with these. A narrow soundstage doesn't necessarily negatively impact your ability to pinpoint different sound sources. That's mostly the sound design of the game itself that you're playing. But if you do want something that is more open, there are plenty of open back headphones on the market. Not a whole lot of headsets. But the Dropbox EPOS PC38X is something that I really like. It doesn't have as good detail as the A50X, but it does have more bass and it does have a more open soundstage. Now for competitive FPS performance, if that's the only thing that you're looking for, I actually still do give the edge to the Odyssey Maxwell over all these headsets and every headset that I've used, honestly. I actually don't find this thing to be particularly pleasant to listen to, but the transient response is quick. The bass starts and it stops really fast. So unnaturally dry is probably the best way that I can really describe the sound of this. But when you get things like rumbly bass and explosions, that stuff starts and it stops really fast. And I say unnaturally because like if you've ever heard like a real explosion, it like booms and then it kind of stays there. And there's like kind of like the after like shock. You just kind of like I heard a car explode. It's like and then like you kind of hear it for a little while, but in this bass and sub bass it just stops really quickly. So for immersion, it's definitely lacking in comparison to all of these in my opinion. But for Warzone, for example, this is perfect for hearing footsteps, how many pairs of footsteps so that you know who's around you, how many people are around you, and also hearing opponents through kill streaks. Now for something non-competitive like Dead Space or Need for Speed, I definitely like the A50X for the immersion. With the gaming preset in G Hub, it's pretty much exactly how I tweak these for shooters. So I'd start stock and then move to that if you don't feel like footsteps are standing out enough for you. Overall, the headphone audio quality is natural with great detail, low distortion even with EQ, and just fun to listen to for gaming. For competitive, I'd put it maybe number 3 or 4 underneath the Maxwell and then the EPOS A6 Pro, and either right below the Pro X2 or tied with it because they can be EQ'd to sound really similar. And as for my personal favorite sound for immersive games, music, and movies, I'd have it number 3 under the Dropbox EPOS PC38X number 1, and then actually number 2 is the A50 Gen 4. I just love that bass. I'm a bass head. The Astro A50 X has an excellent microphone. I'm speaking into it right now. I do highly recommend actually bending it in so it can be closer to your mouth if you have it as it is by default. It's just way too quiet. Now, honestly, it's way too quiet even if it is close to your mouth. And I think that's actually the biggest weakness with this microphone is if you're speaking at a normal volume, if you're not like in a game and you're like shouting, if you're just speaking normally to the camera or if you're on a voice call or something like that, then you might have to boost this in post and it's going to bring up the noise floor. But let me talk about what's great about this microphone. So these are just the default. This is, you see it's flat right here. I have it at default. You can go through the different curated presets. This is not using Blue Voice anymore, which is interesting. I kind of like this better because it gets rid of a lot of the fluffy types of filters and presets and stuff like that, because I don't think this microphone really needs all that. This is 60 hertz to 20 kilohertz, and as you see, this starts over at 80. You can change the noise gate. I'll go ahead and demonstrate that in a little bit, but overall the tonality is great. It sounds very similar to the Corsair HS80, but it doesn't quite have that same level of distortion in the sibilance range. This doesn't quite have the body that I would necessarily like, and it's a little bit nasally, but I've actually made my own preset, this nasal removal. This is the one that I like a lot. I've reduced some of the upper mids just to make it so that it's a more rounded out type of sound. I really like the way that this sounds. If the microphone was a little bit louder, I'd say that this was perfect. I might even go ahead and record a full video with this microphone. But let me go ahead and show a couple of the other presets, then I'll demonstrate the noise reduction of this. So this is competition, which is just going to make the vocal clarity a lot more, even though it's going to not necessarily sound that pleasant to listen to. And this is broadcast, where you get a little bit of that extra bass, but they're also boosting up the treble. I'm not really sure why, but I guess if that's how you feel. Now, let me go over to default because this is what it sounds like. I'll go ahead and demonstrate a little bit of keyboard typing. So this is the default background noise rejection of this microphone. I have it at its default preset and there's no noise gate on. Now let me go ahead over to here. As you'll see that the noise gate will, it'll allow voice transmission if it's over a certain volume. If it's under, then it'll block everything. I don't like it. I prefer an actual noise reduction filter, but let me demonstrate how this works. So that was with it off. Let me go ahead and set it to night, and this should reject just a little bit. And it's mostly for when I'm not doing anything, not typing, not saying anything. It'll have a threshold for that. So you won't really be able to hear my PC fan as much. You might not be able to hear it at all anyway, because this microphone's not incredibly sensitive, even though it is omnidirectional. Moving over to home, this is when we really start to have some issues and it starts to cut out your voice significantly. I think tournament is just kind of hilarious how they do it. I've played in several tournaments, but I play in Friday game tournaments. I don't commentate like with the microphone like this. So I wouldn't really be able to test this in its actual ideal environment because I don't play FPS games competitively to the level where I'd have to play at a tournament live. It's just going to be something that I'm doing online. So yeah, if you want something that's extreme with the noise gate, then tournament can do that. But yeah, I just keep this off because I don't think that it really needs it. Now this transitions nicely to the software because we already talked about what this does with the microphone. I haven't actually dabbled with this. I might make a different video talking about it, but basically this will actually, I'll go ahead and show OBS. I know it's going to have all these different ones, but if you can choose your mic and you can pick one that is stream out. So that would be like, it's basically kind of like a mixer over there. It's not something that, so that will be for a different video, but going over to the headphones section, actually, let me go ahead and change my microphone over to nasal removal just so that I can continue with this. There are different presets that you can use here. This is just default. This is for the headphone audio right here. The point is you can make your own, and this is gaming. This is the one that I was using when I was playing Warzone, and I thought this was pretty effective because this pretty much lines up exactly with what I've been saying in my videos for the last like 2 years, which is boosting that upper mid range and dropping the bass a little bit. It seems a little counterintuitive, even though the footsteps are actually most prominent down here. It does really help the footsteps to stand out because it makes the explosions and other rumbles not really muddy everything up. Now, media, this is to make dialogue stand out right here. And then this is just for immersion in bass. This is my bass one. I'm a bass head, so I make it pretty extreme. Drop the upper mids, drop the highs, and then have the bass. The sub bass doesn't really do a whole lot in this. You can't really hear this, but I just raised it anyway. But this, I really like that like rumble and boom, but it can't quite get this to the level of like the A50 Gen 4. But hey, it's still something I enjoy for immersive games and for movies and stuff like that. There is also a phone app, and this lets you pretty much control the same things as the desktop app. Both of these apps took me a long time to actually get them to work. I had to uninstall them and reinstall them multiple times. The phone app only works if you have it on PlayStation or Xbox mode, and it does let you adjust the side tone in the phone app. Now let's talk about the comfort and the build of the A50X. So this device is actually very similar to the A50 Gen 4. This is the A50 Gen 4 right here, and this is the A50X. Visually, not a whole lot has changed. It has the same, best way I can describe it is just gamery look of it. It's like a really kind of bulky headset. Can't really take it outside anyway, but it's not something that you would want to. Now the older one definitely had this creakiness going on even when I first got it. Also, the paint started chipping off not too long after I had it either. The paint on the top, the paint on the sides. This one's all plastic except for this headband adjustment mechanism, which I still, again, don't know if this is plastic or like hard plastic or a little bit of metal on here. It does feel soft like plastic, but it gets a little bit cool to the touch when it's cold, so it does conduct that type of heat like metal. The swivel, you could actually rest this around your neck. I'll demonstrate that with the A50X, and it's actually really comfortable when you do that. And then the pads are in pretty good shape even after 2.5 years, and they got these magnets on them. Actually, the A50X, let's transition over to that because that has the same type of magnets. Not only are they the same type of magnets, but these might actually be the exact same ear pads, because if you take one off here and then take one off the A50 Gen 4, you can actually slap this on the new A50X. Hopefully I don't get them mixed up. Let's try to not also, well, this one has a little bit more wear, so it'll be hard to do that. But yeah, that's pretty cool. The paint up top has the same glossy, soft touch plastic look, so I hope it doesn't chip off like this one because I didn't do anything to it. Just over time, it started peeling off. Either hard plastic or a little bit of metal here, same type of thing, feels the same. The rest of the body, all plastic. This doesn't have that creakiness. I do enjoy that. You can rest it on your shoulders without it being uncomfortable or pinching in your neck like most gaming headsets. I think the A50 Gen 4 did a great job of that, and the A50X does a really good job at it as well. Same thing. The newer A50X is a little bit lighter. This is 363 grams, whereas this was 380 grams, the A50 Gen 4. You do feel the weight on them after a while, but they're nowhere near this. This is the Odyssey Maxwell, and this is 490 grams without the microphone. So overall, I'd say the A50X gets a B in comfort. The build is a little lackluster. There's not enough metal on here, but it does keep the weight down, so I understand that. But that said, it doesn't match the HyperX Cloud 3 wired or wireless. Those got some aluminum on them, but the pads are just incredibly comfortable. It's a little bit heavy, but the weight distribution is good, and these cloth ear pads are very comfortable. Hopefully they come out with some mod kit ear pads so that we can get some pleather as well. The headband up here has the same type of cloth, and you can pull this thing out as well. So now for my verdict. The Astro A50 X is an excellent feature-packed headset, but they didn't cut any corners in terms of performance or the comfort or build quality. The headphone audio quality is really good. Good tuning, but you can also adjust it quite a bit. Microphone is really good, and the features are really advanced. Being able to plug in HDMI with the Xbox and the PlayStation and toggle between all three of them just using a button, and then it's got Bluetooth. This thing really does pretty much everything right, except the fact that it doesn't have Bluetooth built into the headset itself. But to answer the original question, is all of this worth $380? For the overwhelming majority of people, hell no. If you're on PlayStation or PC, I would stick with the Logitech G Pro X2 and EQ this thing. The microphone's not very good, but this thing launched for $250, and even that is a lot, but I think that the sound quality is worth more closer to that than $380. This also does have real Bluetooth where it's actually built into the headset itself. I would say the only people that should actually consider buying the A50 X are those that can use all of the biggest features of this device. You got a PlayStation, you got an Xbox, both connected to the same monitor, maybe you even got your PC connected to that same monitor as well, or a monitor right next to it. You want to be able to plug all of them into the headset and use this for all three different systems. Maybe you're actually a big fan of Dolby Atmos. You want to be able to use that with Xbox. You want to be able to use that on PC. Basically, the only thing that can make this headset worth it is if you're going to actually use all 6 of these ports on the back, and you're going to have 6 wires coming out of this base station. If you're not going to be using all of them, then this thing is almost definitely not worth it.